Hi guys, the night is quiet. Far away, beyond the noise of the modern world, beyond bright lights and busy roads, another landscape slowly appears. A river moves through darkness. Its water glides softly beneath the stars. The air is warm. Not hot now, as it will be later beneath the sun, but gently warm. A faint breeze drifts over the riverbanks. Reeds whisper against one another. Somewhere in the distance, a bird calls once and then falls silent again. This is Egypt. Not the Egypt of famous kings and towering monuments. Not the Egypt of grand ceremonies or crowded celebrations. Tonight, we enter a different Egypt. A quieter Egypt. A world of ordinary people. A world where most lives followed nearly the same path day after day, season after season, year after year. As the stars hang above the Nile, countless families sleep inside simple mud brick homes. Their roofs are flat. Their rooms are small. Their blankets are thin. The heat of the day still lingers inside the walls. Many sleep lightly. Tomorrow will begin early. Tomorrow will look very much like yesterday. And that is where our story begins. For thousands of years, Egyptian life changed very slowly. Entire generations lived and died while following routines that their grandparents would have recognized immediately. The same fields. The same river. The same foods. The same tasks. The same roads. The same seasons. Life moved like the Nile itself. Steady. Predictable. Endless. And perhaps the real reason Egyptian life became so repetitive was because almost everything depended on one thing. The river. Even now, in the darkness, the Nile quietly shapes every sleeping village along its banks. Without it, Egypt would barely exist. Beyond the green fields stretches an enormous desert. The desert waits silently beneath the moonlight. Its sands seem endless. Its emptiness feels ancient. Very few people live there. Most people remain close to the river. Close to water. Close to fertile soil. Close to life itself. The Nile determines where homes are built. It determines where crops grow. It determines when farmers work. It determines when food is harvested. It even determines how taxes are collected and how governments operate. Everything circles back to the river. And because the river follows a dependable pattern, human life begins to follow the same pattern too. Year after year, the Nile rises. Year after year, it spreads water across the fields. Year after year, it leaves behind rich dark soil. Then the water slowly retreats. Farmers plant. Crops grow. Harvest arrives. Then the cycle begins again. This rhythm continues so steadily that entire communities organize their lives around it. Children grow up watching the same cycle. Parents teach the same cycle. Grandparents remember the same cycle. The river becomes a clock that never stops. A calendar written in water. Long before sunrise, many workers are already awake. Inside one small village, a farmer opens his eyes. The room is dim. Only faint moonlight enters through a small opening. His body feels heavy. Yesterday was long. Tomorrow will be long as well. He sits quietly for a moment. The house is still. Nearby, his wife sleeps beside their children. Outside, the village remains dark. Soon others will wake. Soon sandals will scrape against dusty ground. Soon doors will open. Soon voices will begin filling the cool morning air. But for now, there is silence. The farmer stands. His joints ache slightly. Years of labor have left their marks. He stretches. Then he steps outside. The sky is beginning to lighten. The stars fade slowly. A pale glow appears along the horizon. Across the village, other figures emerge from their homes. No one rushes. There is no need. Everyone knows exactly what the day requires. The same work waits. The same fields. The same paths. The same tools. Many mornings have looked like this. Many more will follow. This predictability is not unusual. It is expected. Most people do not spend their days searching for new opportunities or new adventures. Instead, survival depends upon repeating successful routines. A farmer who understands his land keeps farming. A fisherman who understands the river keeps fishing. A potter keeps shaping clay. A baker keeps making bread. A scribe keeps writing records. Skills pass from parent to child. Occupations often remain within families. Life continues along familiar tracks. As sunlight begins spreading across the landscape, the village slowly comes alive. Smoke rises from cooking fires. Women prepare simple morning meals. Grain is ground into flour. Bread dough is shaped. Water jars are carried from storage areas. Children rub sleep from their eyes. The smell of baking bread begins drifting through narrow streets. It is a familiar smell. Comforting. Reliable. Like nearly everything else in Egyptian life. Food itself rarely changes dramatically. Most families eat similar meals throughout the year. Bread remains at the center of daily life. Beer, made from grain, is common as well. Vegetables appear when available. Fish may supplement meals near the river. For wealthier households, additional foods become possible. But for ordinary workers, meals often remain simple and repetitive. Yet repetition brings stability. People know what to expect. They know how much grain is needed. They know when supplies must be stored. They know how to survive difficult seasons. Soon the farmer reaches his fields. Morning sunlight touches the dark soil. The earth still feels cool. Birds move through the reeds near irrigation channels. The farmer begins working. He does not question the routine. This is what he has always done. His father worked these fields. His grandfather likely worked similar fields. The labor is demanding. There are no machines. Every task requires physical effort. Digging. Planting. Carrying. Harvesting. Repairing. Hours pass beneath an increasingly powerful sun. Sweat forms quickly. The heat becomes intense. The farmer pauses occasionally. He drinks water. He wipes dust from his face. Then he continues. Around him, dozens of others work in much the same way. Their movements become part of the landscape itself. Human labor and agriculture exist together in a rhythm that rarely changes. And this is another reason life becomes repetitive. The environment rewards consistency. Farmers who follow established methods produce food. Communities that respect seasonal cycles survive. Innovation happens slowly because success already depends upon routines that work. Far away, on another stretch of the Nile, fishermen guide small boats across calm water. The river reflects the bright sky. Gentle ripples spread behind wooden vessels. Fishing requires patience. Nets are lowered. Lines are checked. The work follows habits learned over many years. The fishermen know where fish gather. They know how currents behave. They know how weather affects the river. Experience matters. Predictability matters. And so their days resemble one another. Hour after hour. Season after season. The Nile continues flowing. Nearby, merchants begin arranging goods within busy towns. Some sell grain. Others offer pottery. Some trade cloth. Others carry baskets filled with vegetables. Markets create more variety than village life, yet even here repetition remains strong. Most merchants sell similar goods each day. Most customers purchase familiar items. Economic life depends on steady needs rather than constant change. People require food. People require tools. People require clothing. The needs remain remarkably consistent. As the morning advances, another group begins work. The scribes. Inside administrative buildings, scribes sit with writing materials carefully arranged before them. The room may be cooler than the fields outside. The work is different. Yet it is repetitive in its own way. Records must be maintained. Taxes must be documented. Inventories must be counted. Reports must be copied. Names must be written. Numbers must be checked. Day after day, scribes perform these tasks. Many become highly skilled. Their handwriting grows precise. Their knowledge expands. Yet even their work follows familiar patterns. Order is valued. Consistency is valued. Records help preserve stability. And stability remains one of the most important goals in Egyptian society. Outside, the sun climbs higher. The heat deepens. Dust rises from roads. Workers shade their eyes. Animals seek relief where they can. The entire landscape seems to slow beneath the weight of the afternoon. For laborers, this heat becomes a constant companion. It shapes schedules. It shapes movement. It shapes energy itself. Many tasks begin early because midday temperatures can be exhausting. People learn to respect the climate. They adapt to it. And once again, adaptation leads to routine. Routine leads to repetition. The day unfolds as countless days have unfolded before. Children assist parents. Workers continue their trades. Farmers tend fields. Boats travel along the river. The rhythm remains unbroken. And perhaps that rhythm brings a certain comfort. Modern minds often search for novelty. But ancient survival often depended on familiarity. Knowing what tomorrow would require could be reassuring. Knowing where food would come from could bring peace. Knowing that neighbors followed similar routines created a sense of shared understanding. Life was difficult. Yet it was also understandable. As afternoon slowly turns toward evening, shadows lengthen across the ground. The worst heat begins to fade. A softer light settles over fields and villages. Workers start returning home. Their bodies are tired. Their clothing carries dust. Their hands show signs of labor. But the day is ending. The farmer walks back along a familiar path. He has walked this route thousands of times. The road bends past fields. Past irrigation channels. Past small clusters of homes. Everything feels known. Nothing surprises him. And perhaps that is the deepest reason Egyptian life remains so repetitive. The world around most people changed very little. The river stayed. The fields stayed. The villages stayed. The seasons stayed. Generation after generation inherited a landscape that encouraged continuity rather than transformation. Evening settles gently across the Nile Valley. Cooking fires appear once more. Families gather. Simple meals are shared. Voices fill the air. Children speak about their day. Parents listen. Grandparents rest nearby. The smell of bread drifts through narrow streets again. Above them, the sky begins filling with stars. One by one, lights disappear inside homes. The village grows quieter. Workers stretch tired muscles. The farmer lies down. Tomorrow will bring familiar tasks. Familiar sounds. Familiar sights. The same river. The same fields. The same rising sun. And as sleep slowly arrives, the Nile continues flowing through darkness, carrying with it the steady rhythm that shaped countless lives across ancient Egypt. Far beyond the village, the water glimmers softly beneath the stars. Its quiet movement seems endless. Its patterns seem eternal. And while the people sleeping along its banks may never think about it directly, the river is patiently teaching them the same lesson every day. Return. Repeat. Continue. Return again. The rhythm moves through the land like a gentle heartbeat beneath the night sky. The rhythm continues through the night. While most villages sleep, the Nile keeps moving quietly through the darkness. Moonlight shimmers across its surface. Small waves touch the muddy banks and drift away again. Reeds sway softly in the warm breeze. Somewhere far downstream, a fisherman sleeping inside a simple boat shifts beneath a blanket and settles once more into silence. Ancient Egypt is rarely completely still. Even at night, water moves. Animals wander. The desert wind travels slowly across open ground. Yet human life follows a pattern of rest and labor that has remained almost unchanged for generations. The stars overhead seem familiar too. For countless years, people have looked up at the same constellations. A farmer sleeping beside the Nile sees the same stars his grandfather saw. His grandfather saw the same stars that earlier generations watched before him. The sky itself becomes another symbol of continuity. Another reminder that some things rarely change. As darkness slowly gives way to dawn, the first sounds begin appearing once more. A rooster calls. A door opens. Footsteps move across packed earth. The cycle begins again. Many people wake before the sun rises above the horizon. The coolest hours of the day are precious. Workers want to complete as much labor as possible before the strongest heat arrives. Inside a modest mud brick house, a woman sits beside a grinding stone. The room is dim. A small oil lamp flickers softly nearby. She begins grinding grain. The movement is steady. Back and forth. Back and forth. The sound is quiet but constant. It is a sound heard throughout Egypt every morning. Millions of loaves of bread begin with this simple task. The work requires strength. Hour after hour, women grind grain into flour. The process changes little across the centuries. The tools remain familiar. The movements remain familiar. Even young children grow up recognizing the sound. Many wake to it every morning. It becomes part of daily life. Part of the background music of ancient Egypt. Outside, the village slowly brightens. Sunlight touches rooftops. Dusty pathways begin filling with movement. Neighbors greet one another. Donkeys carry supplies. Children fetch water. The air remains pleasant for a short while. People know it will not last. By midday, the heat will return. So work begins early. A young boy follows his father toward the fields. His feet know the path well. He has walked it many times. Soon he will learn every stage of farming. He will learn when to plant, when to irrigate, when to harvest, when to store grain. These lessons are not written in books for most ordinary families. They are passed through observation, through repetition, through years of practice. Knowledge becomes part of daily routine. Children learn because they participate. They watch. They imitate. They remember. By adulthood, many can perform tasks almost automatically. The routines become deeply rooted. As familiar as breathing. Farther north, another village begins its day beside a stretch of river lined with fishing boats. The fishermen inspect their nets. They examine knots. They check wooden poles. They look across the water and read its subtle signs. The river speaks in quiet ways. Changes in current. Changes in color. Changes in movement. Experienced fishermen notice details that others might miss. Yet even this knowledge follows repetitive patterns. They return to the same fishing grounds. Use the same techniques. Repair the same equipment. The work remains demanding. But familiarity makes it manageable. People know what must be done. And they know how to do it. The river continues to provide. That reliability shapes the entire society. In many parts of the ancient world, uncertainty dominates life. Weather can be unpredictable. Food supplies can disappear. Harvests can fail without warning. Egypt faces difficulties as well. But the Nile often provides a level of stability that few other regions enjoy. Its flooding cycle remains remarkably dependable. This dependable cycle encourages dependable lives. The relationship becomes deeply connected. One supports the other. The river offers consistency. People build consistent routines around it. Over centuries, these routines become traditions. Traditions become expectations. Expectations become culture. As the morning advances, workshops begin filling with workers. A potter kneads clay carefully. His hands press and fold the material until it becomes smooth. Nearby, finished vessels dry in the sunlight. Many look nearly identical. Bowls, jars, storage containers. Shapes perfected long ago. Shapes that continue because they work well. Customers expect certain designs. Merchants request familiar products. There is little reason to change them. The potter's life becomes another example of repetition shaping daily existence. Each morning resembles the last. Clay arrives. Clay is prepared. Clay is shaped. Clay is fired. Then the process begins again. Year after year. The repetition is not considered unusual. It is simply life. Nearby, weavers work with linen. Their fingers move carefully through threads. The motions become almost effortless through experience. A young apprentice watches closely. Soon she will learn the same techniques. Soon her hands will move with similar confidence. And years later, she may teach another apprentice. Generations connect through repeated actions. The continuity stretches across centuries. As the sun climbs higher, roads become busier. Merchants travel between settlements. Some walk. Some ride donkeys. Some transport goods by boat. Trade creates movement, yet even trade follows predictable paths. Certain routes are well established. Certain markets operate regularly. Certain products travel repeatedly between the same communities. Egypt's geography encourages this stability. The Nile acts like a great road running through the country. Boats move north with the current. Sails catch winds moving south. Travel becomes easier along the river than across the surrounding deserts. Because transportation follows established routes, settlements remain connected in familiar ways. Messages travel. Goods travel. People travel. Yet much remains unchanged. The river ties everything together. By midday, heat settles heavily over the land. The bright sunlight seems almost endless. Stone walls grow warm. Dusty roads shimmer. Animals seek shade beneath trees or simple shelters. Workers pause whenever possible. The heat cannot be ignored. For many laborers, surviving the climate becomes part of their daily routine. Water is precious. Rest is necessary. Energy must be managed carefully. The environment shapes behavior every day. And because the environment remains similar year after year, behavior remains similar too. A builder working on a construction project wipes sweat from his forehead. The stone beneath his hands feels hot. The work is slow. Everything requires effort. Blocks must be moved. Materials must be prepared. Tools must be maintained. Large projects can continue for years. Sometimes for decades. Workers spend much of their lives performing the same physical actions. Lifting. Carrying. Shaping. Positioning. Their muscles adapt. Their bodies adapt. Their schedules adapt. The repetition becomes normal. At first glance, such a life might seem monotonous. But many ancient Egyptians likely viewed it differently. Predictability carried value. It provided structure. It created expectations. People knew their responsibilities. They understood their place within the community. The farmer farmed. The baker baked. The fisherman fished. The scribe recorded. The potter shaped clay. Each role supported the larger society. Everyone depended on everyone else. The system worked because people continued performing familiar tasks. The rhythm connected them together. Later in the afternoon, shadows begin stretching across the ground once again. The harshest heat slowly fades. A softer golden light spreads across fields and villages. Many workers feel relief. Their bodies are tired. Their clothing carries the marks of another long day. Yet there is comfort in returning home. Along narrow paths, people begin moving back toward their communities. Dust rises beneath sandals. Voices drift through the air. The smell of cooking slowly appears. A woman carries water jars balanced carefully. A child follows nearby. A merchant closes his stall. A fisherman secures his boat. The entire landscape seems to exhale. Work gives way to evening. Inside homes, daily routines continue. Meals are prepared. Bread is shared. Families gather together. Conversations remain simple. People discuss weather, harvests, neighbors, supplies, the concerns of ordinary life. Many topics remain familiar because daily life itself remains familiar. A child listens to stories told by an older relative. Perhaps the stories have been told many times before. That hardly matters. Repetition exists in storytelling too. Stories survive because they are repeated. Songs survive because they are repeated. Customs survive because they are repeated. Memory itself depends upon repetition. As darkness slowly returns, lamps glow softly inside homes. Their small flames dance against mud brick walls. Outside, the village grows quieter. The sounds of labor disappear. The sounds of rest begin. Some people sit outdoors where the evening air feels cooler. Others retire indoors. The stars emerge one by one. The Nile reflects them quietly. And once again, another day comes to an end. Not a dramatic day. Not a famous day. Not a day that historians would record. Simply a normal day. The kind of day experienced by millions of ordinary Egyptians across thousands of years. A day filled with work, food, family, heat, dust, routine. And perhaps that is the true heart of ancient Egypt. Not only monuments, not only rulers, but ordinary people living ordinary lives within an extraordinary continuity. The same river flowing past familiar villages. The same fields producing grain. The same homes sheltering families. The same stars shining above the Nile. Night deepens. The breeze moves gently through the reeds once more. The water continues its endless journey through the darkness. And across the river valley, countless tired workers close their eyes, knowing that tomorrow will arrive much like today. The same paths will wait. The same labor will wait. The same comforting rhythm will wait. Patient. Steady. Unchanging. Like the river itself. Before the first light reaches the horizon, Egypt rests beneath a blanket of quiet darkness. The Nile flows through the stillness. Its water slides gently past villages, fields, temples, and docks that sleep beneath the stars. A faint breeze drifts across the riverbanks. Reeds rustle softly. Palm leaves sway with slow, sleepy movements. For a little while longer, the world feels suspended between yesterday and today. Inside mud brick homes, families sleep close together. The walls hold traces of yesterday's warmth. Simple mats cover the floors. Clay jars stand quietly in corners. Baskets rest beside doorways, waiting for another day of use. Many people sleep deeply from physical exhaustion. Life in ancient Egypt demands constant effort. Food does not appear without labor. Homes do not repair themselves. Fields do not cultivate themselves. Almost every necessity requires human hands. And so each evening, tired bodies welcome rest. Yet before long, the familiar rhythm begins once more. A woman wakes first. She sits quietly for a moment, allowing her eyes to adjust to the darkness. Outside, the village remains silent. Inside the home, her children continue sleeping. She rises carefully and prepares for another day. She does not wonder what the day will bring. She already knows. That certainty is one of the defining features of life along the Nile. Most people can predict tomorrow with remarkable accuracy. The same chores await. The same responsibilities. The same paths through the village. The same fields beyond the houses. The same customers at the market. The same tools. The same conversations. Life moves forward, but often within familiar boundaries. Soon the first signs of dawn appear. The eastern sky begins to pale. Birds awaken among the reeds. The river catches the earliest traces of light. A new day begins almost exactly as countless others have begun before it. Across Egypt, thousands of villages experience nearly identical mornings. Doors open. Water jars are lifted. Cooking fires are lit. Grain is ground. Animals are fed. Workers prepare themselves for another day beneath the sun. The repetition extends far beyond individual routines. Entire communities operate according to shared schedules. The environment encourages this cooperation. When the Nile floods, everyone pays attention. When planting season arrives, everyone responds. When harvest comes, entire communities become busy with the same tasks. Life becomes synchronized. One family's routine often mirrors the routines of their neighbors. The result is a society that moves together like a slow, steady current. As the sun rises higher, a group of farmers makes its way toward the fields. The dusty road is already familiar beneath their feet. Many have traveled this route every day for years. Some have done so for decades. The fields stretch outward before them, green against the surrounding desert landscape. This contrast has always been striking. Life gathers around the river. Beyond it waits the vast emptiness of sand and stone. The desert remains quiet and watchful. Its presence serves as a constant reminder of how important the Nile truly is. Without the river, these villages could not exist. Without the river, these fields would disappear. Without the river, daily life would become almost impossible. Because survival depends so completely on the Nile, people naturally organize their lives around its rhythms. Over generations, those rhythms become traditions. Traditions become habits. Habits become the structure of everyday existence. The farmers begin working. Their tools are simple. Wood, stone, copper. Materials shaped by skilled craftsmen. The tools themselves change little over long periods of time. One generation uses them. The next generation inherits similar versions. The work remains familiar. Seeds are planted. Irrigation channels are maintained. Weeds are removed. Soil is prepared. Hours pass slowly beneath the growing warmth of the sun. A farmer pauses and looks across the fields. He sees neighbors working nearby. Perhaps he has known them his entire life. Perhaps their families have lived beside one another for generations. The landscape itself encourages stability. People often remain close to where they were born. Communities develop strong roots. Families become deeply connected to particular pieces of land. The same homes shelter generation after generation. The same roads connect familiar places. The same landmarks guide travelers. Change happens, but slowly. Very slowly. Nearby, children help with simple tasks. They carry water. They gather supplies. They observe adults carefully. Learning happens through participation. No formal lessons are needed for many daily skills. Children watch. Children imitate. Children practice. Over time, knowledge becomes second nature. A young girl watches her mother bake bread. She notices how much flour is used. She notices how dough is mixed. She notices how the oven is prepared. These observations become future memories. Years later, she may perform the same actions without even thinking about them. The cycle continues. Parents teach children. Children become parents. Knowledge passes quietly from one generation to the next. This continuity helps explain why Egyptian life often appears repetitive to modern observers. People preserve what works. Successful methods survive. Reliable routines remain. In many cases, there is little reason to abandon them. The afternoon approaches. Heat spreads across the land. The sunlight becomes intense. Workers move more slowly. Shadows shrink. The air feels heavy. Across Egypt, countless laborers experience the same sensation. The climate shapes every aspect of daily life. People learn when to work hardest. They learn when to rest. They learn how much water they need. They learn how to avoid exhaustion. These lessons become part of everyday routine. Even simple activities adapt to the environment. A fisherman pulling in nets understands how weather affects fish behavior. A merchant understands which hours are best for travel. A builder understands how the heat affects physical labor. Every occupation develops habits designed to work with the climate rather than against it. The result is another layer of repetition. The environment teaches people what works. People repeat those successful behaviors. The cycle continues indefinitely. Farther downriver, a crowded workshop hums with activity. The sounds are familiar. Clay vessels being shaped. Wood being carved. Tools striking stone. Workers speaking quietly. Dust floating through shafts of sunlight. Many craftsmen spend years mastering a single trade. Some spend their entire lives perfecting one skill. A carpenter learns how wood behaves. A potter learns how clay responds. A weaver learns how threads move beneath skilled fingers. The repetition is not meaningless. It creates expertise. It creates reliability. Customers know what to expect. Craftsmen know how to deliver it. The economy itself benefits from predictability. A merchant arriving at a workshop expects certain products. A household purchasing supplies expects familiar quality. Trust grows when routines remain dependable. And trust helps communities function smoothly. As afternoon slowly gives way to evening, the atmosphere begins to soften. The heat loosens its grip. A gentle breeze returns. Birds move through the reeds along the river. The light becomes golden. The entire landscape seems calmer. Workers begin making their way home. Many carry tools. Some carry baskets. Others carry supplies gathered during the day. Their pace is unhurried. The work is finished for now. Tomorrow can wait until tomorrow. The roads become busier as people return to their villages. Voices drip through the warm evening air. Children run ahead. Neighbors exchange greetings. A donkey loaded with goods moves steadily along the path. Nothing feels rushed. The rhythm remains gentle. Back inside the villages, evening routines begin. Cooking fires appear. The smell of bread rises once again. Simple meals are prepared. Water is poured. Families gather together. These moments may be among the most comforting parts of the day. The labor is finished. The heat is fading. The night approaches. A farmer sits beside his family. His muscles ache. His hands are rough. His clothing carries traces of dust from the fields. Yet there is satisfaction in completing another day. The work was difficult. But the work was familiar. And familiarity can bring comfort. Across the village, countless families experience similar evenings. People eat. People talk. People rest. Children listen to stories. Older relatives share memories. The sounds of daily life gradually soften. One by one, the cooking fires burn lower. One by one, conversations fade. Darkness returns. Above the Nile Valley, stars emerge once more. The night sky stretches endlessly overhead. Many ancient Egyptians spent time observing it. The stars seem dependable. The seasons seem dependable. The river seems dependable. The entire world feels connected through cycles. Flooding. Planting. Harvesting. Sleeping. Waking. Working. Resting. Again and again. Year after year. Century after century. Perhaps that is why Egyptian civilization endured for so long. Its foundation rested upon repetition. Not chaotic repetition. Not meaningless repetition. But the repetition of successful patterns. The repetition of reliable systems. The repetition of routines that allowed millions of people to survive in a challenging environment. Tonight, as another village settles into sleep, the Nile continues its journey beneath the moonlight. Its waters move patiently through the darkness. The same river that nourished ancestors. The same river that nourishes their descendants. The same river that quietly shapes every aspect of life along its banks. A cool breeze drifts across the water. Reeds whisper softly. The stars shine above. And all across ancient Egypt, tired workers close their eyes once more, surrendering to sleep while the great river carries the steady rhythm of their world into another peaceful night. The night deepens over the Nile Valley. The villages rest quietly beneath a sky filled with stars. From above, the river appears like a dark ribbon winding through the landscape. On either side, narrow bands of fertile land stretch across the valley before giving way to the vast desert beyond. The contrast is gentle but constant. Life and dryness. Water and sand. Green fields and empty horizons. For thousands of years, this landscape has remained largely the same. And because the landscape remains familiar, daily life remains familiar as well. A traveler walking along the Nile might pass dozens of villages during a journey. At first glance, each community appears slightly different. One may be larger. Another may sit closer to the water. A third may be surrounded by wider fields. Yet beneath these small differences, the routines are remarkably alike. The same ovens produce bread. The same irrigation channels guide water. The same tools work the soil. The same schedules shape daily life. Every morning begins with labor. Every evening ends with rest. The pattern repeats so consistently that entire generations measure time through routine rather than through major events. Many ordinary Egyptians will never travel far from home. Their world is often defined by familiar landmarks. The river. The fields. The market. The village road. The nearby grove of trees. The small dock where boats arrive. These places become woven into memory. A child learns them. An adult depends upon them. An elder remembers them. Over decades, the surroundings become deeply connected to identity itself. Long before sunrise, a faint coolness still lingers in the air. This is often the most comfortable part of the day. The darkness begins to soften. Birds stir among the reeds. The first hints of dawn appear in the east. Inside one modest home, a fisherman wakes. His sleeping mat creaks softly as he sits upright. For a moment he listens. The house remains quiet. His family is still asleep. Outside, the village has not fully awakened. He rises slowly. His body carries the familiar aches of years spent working on the water. His hands are rough from nets and rope. His shoulders feel heavy. Yet there is no surprise in these sensations. They are part of life. Part of the routine. Part of the rhythm that has guided him for many years. Soon he steps outside. The sky glows faintly above the horizon. The air smells of river water and damp earth. Nearby, other fishermen emerge from their homes. No one needs to discuss the day's plan. Everyone already understands what must be done. The boats wait where they always wait. The nets need checking. The river must be read. The work begins almost automatically. This deep familiarity shapes much of Egyptian life. Many tasks become second nature through repetition. People no longer need to think carefully about every step. Their bodies remember. Their muscles remember. Their hands remember. Years of practice transform labor into habit. The fishermen walk toward the riverbank. The Nile appears calm this morning. The surface reflects the pale colors of dawn. Small ripples move quietly across the water. The boats are prepared. Nets are inspected. Knots are tightened. Then one by one, the vessels move away from shore. The river accepts them gently. As sunlight slowly spreads across the valley, Egypt begins another day. Farmers head toward their fields. Merchants prepare their goods. Craftsmen open their workshops. Servants begin household duties. Scribes organize their writing materials. Children wake and join the routines around them. The movement feels almost choreographed. Not because anyone planned it that way, but because generations of experience have created a shared rhythm. Every society develops routines. Ancient Egypt developed routines that lasted for centuries. Part of the reason lies in geography. The Nile rarely changed its course dramatically. The agricultural cycle remained dependable. Communities remained anchored to the same locations. Without sudden shifts in daily survival, routines could continue uninterrupted. The stability of nature encouraged stability in human behavior. As the morning grows brighter, a group of workers gathers near a construction site. The project is important. Yet the labor itself is familiar. Stone must be moved. Measurements must be checked. Materials must be organized. The workers begin their tasks with quiet efficiency. Many have performed similar work for years. They know how to lift properly. They know how to coordinate with one another. They know when to rest. Experience reduces uncertainty. Repetition creates confidence. The same pattern appears throughout Egyptian society. A baker understands dough. A farmer understands crops. A potter understands clay. A carpenter understands wood. A weaver understands linen. Knowledge accumulates slowly over time. Once acquired, it is passed down carefully. People value methods that consistently produce results. Because successful methods already exist, change often arrives gradually. This contributes to the repetitive character of daily life. Around midday, the heat returns. The sunlight becomes almost blinding. Fields shimmer beneath the bright sky. Dust hangs in the air. Stone surfaces radiate warmth. Workers feel the weight of the afternoon pressing down upon them. Many pause briefly beneath whatever shade they can find. A tree. A wall. A simple shelter. Water becomes especially important during these hours. Clay jars stand ready in homes, workshops, and fields. Their contents provide relief from the relentless heat. The climate teaches patience. No one can rush through the hottest part of the day without consequences. People learn to pace themselves. They learn to conserve energy. These lessons become part of daily routine. And because the climate remains consistent, the lessons remain relevant year after year. A merchant traveling between villages guides his donkey along a dusty road. The animal moves steadily. The pace is slow but dependable. Trade in ancient Egypt often follows established routes. Certain villages specialize in particular products. Certain markets attract regular visitors. Certain docks become gathering places for merchants. The routes themselves become familiar companions. Travelers learn where to find water, where to rest, where to exchange news. The roads connect communities together while reinforcing patterns that have existed for generations. News certainly travels. Events certainly occur. But for most ordinary people, daily responsibilities remain unchanged. Even when rulers change, Even when officials come and go. Even when decades pass. The fields still require planting. The bread still requires baking. The river still requires navigation. Life continues. By late afternoon, the sunlight begins to soften. Long shadows stretch across the landscape. The most difficult hours are ending. Workers feel a quiet sense of relief. The day's labor has been completed. Soon they can return home. A farmer washes dust from his hands near an irrigation channel. The water feels cool against his skin. Nearby, birds search for food among the reeds. The scene is peaceful. Ordinary. Unremarkable. And yet these ordinary moments make up the vast majority of human history. Most people do not live dramatic lives. Most people wake, work, eat, rest, and sleep. Ancient Egyptians were no different. Their routines may seem repetitive from a distance. But within those routines existed countless small moments. A conversation with a neighbor. A child's laughter. The smell of fresh bread. A cool breeze after a hot afternoon. The sight of sunlight reflecting on the Nile. These experiences gave texture to everyday life. As evening approaches, villages slowly come alive in a different way. Workers return home. Cooking fires appear. Families gather. Voices drift through narrow streets. The atmosphere feels softer now. The urgency of labor has passed. The sky turns golden. Then orange. Then deep blue. The river reflects changing colors with quiet beauty. Children play near doorways while adults prepare meals. A woman kneads dough. A man repairs a tool. An older relative rests nearby. These scenes repeat themselves across countless homes. They are ordinary scenes. Yet they form the foundation of society. Civilizations endure because ordinary people continue performing ordinary tasks. Day after day. Year after year. Generation after generation. As darkness settles once more over the Nile Valley, lamps begin glowing inside homes. Their light flickers gently against mud brick walls. The smell of food lingers in the evening air. Gradually, conversations grow quieter. Families prepare for sleep. The stars return overhead. The same stars that watched over countless previous nights. The same stars that will watch over countless nights still to come. The fisherman who woke before dawn now lies resting once again. His work is finished for today. Tomorrow he will return to the river. Tomorrow the boats will wait. Tomorrow the water will flow. Tomorrow the rhythm will continue. And all across ancient Egypt, millions of lives are connected by this steady repetition. Not because people lack imagination. Not because they resist change. But because the river, the land, the climate, and the needs of survival encourage consistency. The Nile flows. The seasons turn. The fields produce food. Families continue their routines. And beneath the quiet stars of another Egyptian night, the ancient rhythm carries on, patient and unbroken, like the gentle movement of water through darkness. Night settles more deeply over the Nile Valley, as if the world itself is learning how to breathe more slowly. The air cools just slightly, enough to soften the heavy warmth left behind by the day. The river reflects the sky in quiet fragments, broken only by gentle movement that never fully stops. Somewhere along the bank, a small boat drifts into place. Its wooden frame creaks faintly as it settles against the shore. Inside, a fisherman remains still for a moment before lying down to rest. His nets are folded beside him, heavy with the memory of the day's work. Farther inland, villages are already asleep. Mud brick homes hold the warmth of human presence even after silence returns. Families lie close together on woven mats. The sounds of breathing replace the sounds of labor. The day does not vanish all at once. It fades slowly, like light leaving the sky in small pieces. This rhythm is everywhere in Egypt. Work. Rest. Work again. Not in a hurried pattern, but in a steady, repeating cycle that stretches across years without interruption. Long before dawn returns, the river is already moving through darkness as it always does. It does not hurry. It does not pause. It simply continues. In many ways, Egyptian life mirrors this movement. Not identical, but aligned. A quiet harmony between people and the land they live upon. Before sunrise, the first signs of life begin again in a small household near the fields. A baker wakes before the others. The air inside the home is still. Clay walls hold the softness of sleep. He steps carefully, avoiding the sleeping shapes of family members on the floor. Outside, the sky is still dark, but it is no longer deep black. A faint gray begins to form near the horizon. He moves toward a simple oven made of clay and stone. This oven has been used many times before. And it will be used many times again. He kneads dough with slow, practiced movements. Nothing about it is rushed. His hands know the rhythm without needing instruction. Water. Flour. A pinch of salt. The same process repeated across countless mornings. The smell of bread begins to rise even before the fire is fully warm. Soon, other homes will follow the same pattern. Across Egypt, bread is not just food. It is a foundation of daily life. Simple. Reliable. Constant. As dawn approaches, more figures appear in the growing light. Farmers walk toward their fields again, following paths worn smooth by years of footsteps. The ground beneath them is familiar. Every bend in the road, every cluster of reeds, every change in soil texture has been seen many times before. The fields themselves feel almost unchanged from one season to the next. The same irrigation channels. The same boundaries. The same patterns of growth. Even the wind seems to follow familiar routes across the valley, moving through reeds and crops in a way that feels expected rather than surprising. A farmer pauses briefly at the edge of his land. The sun is rising now, spilling light across the river and fields in soft layers. He does not see anything new in this moment. And yet he still looks. Because this is part of the routine as well. To begin the day is to witness the land as it wakes. Behind him, a small group of workers gathers. Their conversation is quiet and brief. Words are not needed for instruction. Everyone already understands what must be done. The soil must be tended. Water must be guided. Plants must be cared for. The work is steady, and it requires patience more than urgency. Hours pass in a familiar rhythm. Sunlight grows stronger. Shadows shorten. Then stretch again as time moves forward. The same cycle that has repeated for generations continues without interruption. In a nearby settlement, scribes are already seated inside a shaded building. Their tools are arranged carefully. Scrolls. Ink. Reed pens. Their work is silent, precise, and repetitive in a different way. They record information that often changes very little from day to day. Names. Quantities. Taxes. Deliveries. Records of grain stored in warehouses. Records of goods exchanged in markets. Records of labor assigned to projects. Each line written today resembles lines written yesterday. And lines that will likely be written tomorrow. This repetition is not accidental. It is necessary. Without it, order would fade. And without order, the steady rhythm of life along the Nile would be more difficult to maintain. Across Egypt, the act of recording becomes another layer of continuity. Memory written down. Memory preserved. Memory repeated in written form. By mid-morning, the heat begins to rise. The sun grows stronger, filling the valley with brightness that feels almost constant. The desert on either side seems to glow under its weight. Even the river appears more still during these hours, reflecting the sky like a mirror that has learned patience. Workers continue, though movement slows. A builder adjusts a stone carefully, then pauses to wipe sweat from his face. A potter turns clay slowly on a wheel, shaping it with hands that move almost automatically. A weaver checks threads one by one, repeating motions learned long ago. Everywhere, repetition becomes visible. Not as boredom, but as structure. A way of living that allows survival in a world where resources are closely tied to predictable cycles. Around midday, many people retreat into shade. Under small shelters. Beside walls. Beneath trees where they exist. The heat is not fought against. It is accepted. Life in Egypt has long adapted to it. Time itself feels different during these hours. Slower. Heavier. More still. A fisherman resting beside his boat watches the water drift gently past. He does not speak. There is no need. The river itself feels like conversation enough. He has done this many times before. And he will do it again. When the heat passes. When the day softens. When the cycle moves forward. As afternoon begins to lean toward evening, activity slowly returns. Not suddenly. But gradually. Like a world waking from a long pause. Farmers finish their final tasks in the fields. Merchants begin closing their stalls. Workers gather their tools. The return home begins in scattered groups that gradually merge into steady movement along the roads. Dust rises beneath sandals. Voices reappear in the air. The smell of cooking drifts outward from villages. Inside homes, the evening rhythm begins. Water is poured. Bread is broken. Simple meals are shared. The day is spoken about in small fragments. Nothing dramatic. Only the ordinary details of labor and weather and effort. A child listens quietly while sitting near a doorway. The child has heard these stories before. And will hear them again. Because repetition exists even in speech. Stories are repeated so they can be remembered. Songs are repeated so they can be passed on. Instructions are repeated so they can be learned. Everything important is carried forward through repetition. As night returns, lamps are lit once again. Their soft glow fills homes with warmth. Outside, the Nile reflects scattered light beneath a darkening sky. The river remains steady. Unchanged in its path. Unchanged in its purpose. It continues to flow through the same valley it has always known. And along its banks, people settle into the same rhythm they have always followed. Wake. Work. Rest. Repeat. Not as a burden, but as the structure of life itself. The village grows quiet once more. The sounds of the day fade into memory. And the night accepts everything gently, without interruption. Above it all, the stars return again. Familiar. Steady. Endless. And the ancient world continues its quiet rhythm beneath them, carried forward by the same river, the same land, and the same human hands repeating the patterns of life, one peaceful day at a time. The stars remain overhead for a little while longer. They hang above the Nile Valley in silent patterns that seem as old as memory itself. Their light touches the river, the fields, the sleeping villages, and the endless desert beyond. Everything feels still. Not completely motionless, but resting. The kind of quiet that arrives only after a long day of labor. Inside hundreds of homes scattered along the riverbanks, tired families sleep beneath the warm night air. Some rest indoors. Others sleep on rooftops where a faint breeze offers relief from the lingering heat trapped inside mud brick walls. The rooftops are simple. Flat surfaces built from practical materials. Yet during warm nights, they become places of comfort. A father lies beside his children, looking up at the stars before sleep finally arrives. He does not think about history. He does not think about distant centuries. He thinks about tomorrow. About the fields. About the harvest. About whether the irrigation channels need repair. Small thoughts. Ordinary thoughts. The kinds of thoughts that fill most lives. And perhaps that is another reason Egyptian life often feels repetitive. Most people focus not on extraordinary events, but on immediate responsibilities. The work of tomorrow matters more than dreams of distant change. Eventually sleep takes hold. The village falls silent once more. Only the river continues speaking in its quiet language of moving water. Hours pass. Darkness slowly begins to soften. The eastern horizon lightens almost imperceptibly. The first stage of morning arrives. Not daylight. Just the promise of daylight. A faint glow spreading across the edge of the world. Birds begin to stir. Somewhere among the reeds, wings flutter. The air feels cooler now than it will at any other time today. These early moments are precious. Many workers appreciate them deeply. Soon enough, the sun will return with its familiar strength. For now, however, the world feels gentle. A woman carrying a water jar walks toward the river. The path is familiar beneath her feet. She has walked it countless times. The journey requires no thought. Her body knows every turn, every slope, every stone. Routine transforms movement into memory. As she reaches the riverbank, she kneels carefully. The water reflects pale colors from the brightening sky. The Nile appears peaceful, almost sleepy. She fills her jar. Nearby, others are doing the same. No one speaks much. The day is still young. Voices remain soft. The quiet feels natural. By sunrise, activity begins spreading across the valley. Doors open. Cooking fires are lit. Workers prepare tools. Animals are fed. The familiar machinery of daily life slowly comes into motion. Not mechanical machinery. Human machinery. People performing tasks they have learned through years of repetition. Tasks repeated so often that they seem inseparable from the landscape itself. In one village, a young apprentice follows an older craftsman into a workshop. Dust hangs in the morning light streaming through a doorway. Shelves hold finished items waiting for customers. Tools rest exactly where they were left the evening before. The apprentice observes carefully. Every movement matters. The older craftsman demonstrates techniques developed over decades. How to hold a tool. How much pressure to apply. How to recognize mistakes before they become problems. These lessons are not rushed. Mastery takes time. Years, often. The apprentice learns through repetition. Watching. Practicing. Repeating. Making mistakes. Repeating again. This process occurs everywhere in Egyptian society. Knowledge survives because it is repeated. Skills survive because they are repeated. Entire professions survive because they are repeated. A potter learns from a potter. A fisherman learns from a fisherman. A farmer learns from a farmer. The chain stretches backward through generations. As morning progresses, the village marketplace begins to awaken. Merchants arrange goods carefully. Baskets of vegetables appear. Jars are placed in neat rows. Bundles of linen are unfolded. Everything has its place. The market itself follows familiar rhythms. Certain days are busier than others. Certain customers arrive regularly. Certain goods sell more quickly than others. Patterns emerge over time. Merchants learn these patterns. They rely on them. Predictability reduces risk. Predictability helps families plan. Predictability allows communities to function smoothly. By now, sunlight covers the valley. The desert beyond the fields glows beneath the bright sky. Its vastness remains both beautiful and intimidating. Most Egyptians rarely venture far into it. There is little reason to do so. Life exists near the river. Food exists near the river. Communities exist near the river. The Nile creates a narrow corridor of possibility running through an otherwise harsh environment. This concentration of life encourages stability. People stay where resources are available. Settlements remain in established locations. Traditions remain rooted in place. The landscape itself discourages sudden change. A farmer working near an irrigation channel pauses to inspect the flow of water. The channel guides precious river water toward crops growing in the fields. Maintaining these systems requires cooperation. One person alone cannot manage everything. Neighbors must work together. Communities must coordinate efforts. This cooperation strengthens routine. Shared responsibilities create shared schedules. Everyone becomes connected through the same agricultural cycle. When water must be managed, people respond together. When planting begins, people respond together. When harvest arrives, people respond together. The rhythm extends beyond individuals. It becomes communal. The entire village moves in harmony with the land. As the afternoon heat grows stronger, workers seek moments of relief whenever possible. A builder sits briefly beneath a shaded wall. A fisherman adjusts a net while resting near the water. A merchant drinks from a clay cup. The pauses are small but important. Ancient labor is physically demanding. Bodies require recovery. The heat requires respect. Nobody can work endlessly. Even the strongest workers must listen to the limits imposed by climate and exhaustion. The sun continues its journey across the sky. Hours pass. The landscape shimmers beneath waves of warmth. Yet despite the discomfort, people continue. They continue because they must. And because they always have. This persistence becomes another form of repetition. Not simply repeating tasks. Repeating effort. Repeating endurance. Repeating the daily decision to rise and work again. By late afternoon, shadows begin stretching across the ground. The quality of light changes. Everything seems softer now. More forgiving. Workers notice immediately. Relief arrives gradually. The most difficult part of the day is ending. A group of farmers gathers tools. A craftsman closes part of his workshop. Children helping with chores begin looking toward home. The evening rhythm approaches. An evening brings something many people quietly cherish. Rest. The return journey home feels different from the morning journey. Morning carries purpose. Evening carries release. The work is complete. Responsibilities have been met. Families wait beyond the fields and roads. The atmosphere becomes calmer. Dust rises beneath sandals as people walk together. Voices drift through the warm air. Conversations remain simple. Familiar. Comforting. In the village, cooking fires begin appearing one by one. Thin streams of smoke rise into the fading sunlight. The smell of bread soon follows. Then vegetables. Then fish in homes fortunate enough to have it. Meals are rarely elaborate. But they are meaningful. Food represents effort. The result of an entire day's labor. Families gather around simple dishes. Children eat hungrily. Adults speak quietly. An older man sits near a doorway watching the sky darken. He has lived through many harvests. Many floods. Many seasons. And despite the passing years, the structure of life has remained remarkably consistent. The same river. The same fields. The same stars. The same routines. His grandchildren now learn the same patterns he learned as a child. The cycle continues. Night arrives slowly. The last colors fade from the horizon. The stars return. The Nile darkens beneath them. The sounds of the village grow fewer. Workers settle into rest. Families prepare for sleep. The heat begins to loosen its hold. A breeze moves gently through the reeds once more. And as another ordinary day comes quietly to an end, the ancient rhythm remains unbroken. The river flows. The fields wait. The people rest. Tomorrow will come. The sun will rise. The roads will fill with footsteps. The ovens will warm. The boats will leave the shore. And across Egypt, life will continue exactly as it has for generations, moving with the calm, steady pulse of the Nile beneath the endless stars. The Nile moves through the darkness with quiet confidence. Its waters have traveled this path for longer than anyone can remember. Long before the villages appeared. Long before the fields were divided into careful rows. Long before children learned the names of their grandparents and grandparents taught stories beside evening fires. The river was already here. And tonight, as countless nights before it, the Nile continues its patient journey beneath a sky crowded with stars. The villages along its banks are asleep. From a distance, they appear almost like part of the landscape itself. Clusters of mud brick homes rest beneath the moonlight. Narrow paths weave between buildings. Small courtyards sit empty. Tools lean against walls where they were left after the day's labor. Everything waits. The fields wait. The boats wait. The ovens wait. Tomorrow will awaken them all again. Inside one small home, a family sleeps close together. The room is simple. A few baskets. Several clay jars. A wooden stool. Some woven mats. Nothing extravagant. Nothing unnecessary. Most ordinary Egyptians live surrounded by practical objects rather than decorative ones. Every item serves a purpose. Every possession requires effort to create or acquire. Life encourages simplicity. The demands of daily survival leave little room for excess. Yet within these modest homes, families find comfort. The walls provide shelter. The roof provides shade. The household offers stability. And stability is deeply valued in a world shaped by routine. Hours pass quietly. Eventually, the stars begin surrendering their place in the sky. The first pale hints of dawn appear along the horizon. Morning approaches once again. The transition is gradual. The darkness does not disappear suddenly. Instead, the world slowly reveals itself. Shapes emerge. Colors return. Sounds awaken. A bird calls from the reeds. Another answers. The river catches the first traces of light. A fisherman opens his eyes. For a moment he remains still, listening. The familiar sounds of morning surround him. The breeze moving through reeds. The distant call of birds. The faint movement of water against the shore. He knows these sounds well. They have greeted him for most of his life. There is comfort in their predictability. The world feels dependable. Not easy, but dependable. Soon he rises and begins preparing for another day. Nearby, other fishermen are doing exactly the same thing. The boats are waiting. The river is waiting. The routine is waiting. Along another section of the Nile, farmers are already gathering tools. The fields require attention once more. They always do. Agriculture is not a task that can be completed once and forgotten. The fields demand constant care. Water must be managed. Plants must be monitored. Repairs must be made. The work never truly ends. Instead, it moves in cycles. One responsibility leads naturally into another. The seasons change. The tasks change slightly. Yet the overall rhythm remains remarkably stable. As sunlight spreads across the valley, the green fields begin glowing against the surrounding desert. This contrast never completely loses its power. On one side lies life. On the other side lies vast emptiness. The desert stretches outward in every direction beyond the reach of the river. Its silence feels ancient. Its presence serves as a constant reminder of how precious the Nile truly is. Without the river, the fields would disappear. Without the fields, the villages would disappear. Without the villages, the routines that define Egyptian life could not continue. Everything begins with water. Everything returns to water. A young boy walks beside his father toward the fields. He carries a small tool that feels slightly too large for his hands. He wants to help. He wants to learn. The path ahead is familiar. He has walked it many times already. As they travel, his father points toward an irrigation channel. The lesson begins. Not in a classroom. Not through written instructions. But through observation. Through participation. Through repetition. This is how much knowledge is passed from one generation to another. The boy watches carefully. He listens. He remembers. Years from now, these same lessons may feel so natural that he barely notices himself using them. Knowledge becomes habit. Habit becomes routine. Routine becomes tradition. The process continues endlessly. By mid-morning, workshops throughout Egypt are filled with activity. A potter shapes clay. A carpenter smooths wood. A stoneworker measures carefully. The sounds of labor echo softly through open doorways. Tap. Scrape. Turn. Press. Repeat. Many craftsmen spend decades refining a single skill. The work becomes deeply familiar. Their hands often move with remarkable confidence. Not because the tasks are simple, but because the tasks have been repeated thousands of times. Practice transforms effort into expertise. And expertise often encourages consistency. When something works well, people continue doing it. The result is a society where methods remain stable across generations. Customers expect certain products. Craftsmen provide them. Parents teach children. Children preserve the knowledge. The cycle continues. Meanwhile, boats move steadily along the Nile. Some carry grain. Others transport stone. Some carry merchants traveling between settlements. The river acts as both road and lifeline. Traveling by water is often easier than crossing land. The current assists movement in one direction. The wind assists movement in another. Over time, transportation routes become predictable. Certain docks become busy gathering places. Certain villages become regular stops. The movement of goods follows familiar patterns. Trade itself becomes another form of repetition. Not boring repetition. Useful repetition. Reliable repetition. The kind that allows communities to depend upon one another. As the sun climbs higher, heat settles across the landscape. The bright sky seems endless. The air becomes heavy. Workers feel sweat gathering on their skin. The familiar challenge of midday returns. People adapt in countless small ways. Movements become more measured. Breaks become more important. Water becomes more valuable. These adaptations are learned through experience. Generations pass the lessons forward. Everyone understands the heat. Everyone respects it. The climate shapes behavior just as surely as the river shapes the land. A merchant sitting beneath a shaded awning watches people pass through the marketplace. Customers arrive steadily. Not in a rush. Not in large crowds. Just a constant flow of ordinary life. A woman purchases grain. A craftsman exchanges goods. A farmer asks about supplies. The conversations are familiar. The needs are familiar. The market itself feels like part of the larger rhythm. Predictable. Steady. Comforting. By afternoon, shadows begin slowly lengthening once again. The harshest sunlight starts losing its intensity. Workers notice immediately. The atmosphere changes. Relief approaches. A builder places down a tool and stretches tired muscles. His body carries the memory of many years spent working under the Egyptian sun. The aches are familiar. The fatigue is familiar. Even exhaustion becomes part of the routine. People learn how to live alongside it. How to recover from it. How to prepare for tomorrow despite it. As evening draws closer, movement begins shifting toward home. The roads fill with returning workers. The boats head toward shore. Market stalls begin closing. Workshops grow quieter. The day's energy gradually transforms into evening calm. Children run through village streets. Dogs wander lazily between homes. The smell of cooking begins spreading through the air. Smoke rises from ovens. The scent of fresh bread drifts through narrow pathways. For many families, this is one of the most pleasant moments of the day. Labor is ending. Rest is approaching. The pressure of the sun is fading. The village feels softer, gentler, more peaceful. Inside homes, simple meals are prepared. Hands that spent all day working now break bread together. Conversations remain quiet. People discuss practical matters. The condition of crops. The level of the river. Plans for tomorrow. Nothing dramatic. Nothing extraordinary. Just the steady concerns of ordinary life. Yet these conversations matter deeply. They help families stay connected. They help communities function. They reinforce the routines that allow daily life to continue smoothly. Outside, the sky begins changing color. Gold becomes orange. Orange becomes purple. Then slowly, darkness returns. The Nile reflects the fading light. For a brief moment, the river seems almost luminous. Then night settles over the valley once more. One by one, lamps glow inside homes. One by one, voices grow quieter. One by one, families prepare for sleep. The cycle nears completion again. Not completion in an ending sense. Completion in the way a circle completes itself. Only to begin again. The stars emerge overhead. The river continues flowing. The fields rest. The villages sleep. And across ancient Egypt, another ordinary day gently fades into memory, carried away on the same quiet rhythm that has shaped life along the Nile for countless generations. The night settles softly over the Nile once again. A gentle darkness spreads across the valley, wrapping fields, villages, and riverbanks beneath a blanket of stillness. The day's labor has faded into memory. Tools have been put away. Boats have been tied securely to their docks. Cooking fires have burned low. Only the quiet sounds of the night remain. A breeze moves through clusters of reeds. Water touches the shoreline. An occasional bird stirs in its sleep. The ancient world seems to breathe more slowly after sunset. For many workers, nighttime is the only part of the day that truly belongs to them. The fields demand attention during daylight. The workshops demand effort. The markets demand time. But the night asks for very little. Only rest. Only sleep. Only recovery before the cycle begins again. Inside a small village near the river, an elderly woman sits outside her home for a few extra moments before going to bed. The air feels cooler now. Comfortable. She looks toward the Nile. Moonlight reflects across the water in pale ribbons. She has watched this scene thousands of times. As a child. As a young mother. As a grandmother. The river has always been there. Its presence feels permanent. Steady. Reliable. In many ways, it is the most familiar thing in her life. Generations come and go. Children grow into adults. Adults grow old. Yet the Nile continues flowing past the village exactly as it always has. Perhaps that constancy helps explain why life remains so repetitive. The river teaches patience. It teaches continuity. It teaches people to trust in cycles rather than sudden changes. Eventually the elderly woman rises and steps inside. The village falls silent. The stars remain overhead. Hours pass. Slowly. Peacefully. The darkness deepens before finally beginning to fade. A faint gray line appears at the edge of the eastern horizon. Morning approaches once again. The transition feels familiar because it has happened so many times before. A farmer wakes before the sun rises. His body responds almost automatically. Years of routine have created an internal rhythm. He rarely needs anyone to wake him. The timing simply feels natural. His muscles are stiff. His hands carry the marks of long labor. Yet he rises without hesitation. The fields are waiting. Outside, the village slowly comes back to life. Doors creak open. Footsteps appear on dusty paths. Water jars are carried toward the river. The smell of smoke begins drifting from newly lit cooking fires. The sky brightens little by little. The first sunlight touches the tops of palm trees. Then the rooftops. Then the fields. Egypt awakens. As always, bread is among the first concerns of the morning. Throughout the village, grain is ground into flour. The sound is familiar. Stone against grain. Back and forth. Back and forth. A rhythm heard every day. Many women spend hours performing this task throughout their lives. The labor is repetitive, physical, demanding. Yet it remains essential. Without grain, there is no bread. Without bread, daily life becomes much harder. The repetitive work supports the repetitive structure of society itself. Every loaf depends upon countless repeated actions. Planting, growing, harvesting, grinding, mixing, baking. Nothing appears suddenly. Everything emerges through patience and routine. As sunlight spreads across the valley, workers begin moving toward their daily responsibilities. The roads fill with familiar faces. Neighbors greet one another. Children follow parents. Donkeys carry supplies. The village slowly empties as labor draws people outward. A young scribe walks toward an administrative building. Unlike farmers, his work will take place indoors. Yet his life follows routines just as strict. He knows exactly where he will sit. He knows which records require attention. He knows which reports need copying. The details change. The structure remains. Every day involves writing. Every day involves counting. Every day involves preserving information that helps maintain order. The work can be repetitive. But repetition creates accuracy. Accuracy creates stability. And stability remains one of the most valued qualities in Egyptian society. Meanwhile, along the riverbank, fishermen prepare their boats. The morning water appears calm. A thin mist lingers above the surface in certain places. The fishermen inspect their nets carefully. Years of experience have taught them to notice small problems before those problems become larger ones. A loose knot. A worn section of rope. A damaged float. Attention to detail matters. Routine creates that attention. When a task is repeated enough times, people begin noticing subtle things. Their eyes become trained. Their hands become skilled. Their judgment becomes reliable. The boats push away from shore. Ripples spread outward. The river accepts them quietly. As the morning grows warmer, activity increases throughout the valley. Workshops open fully. Markets become busier. Fields fill with laborers. The sounds of work rise into the air. Hammering. Voices. Footsteps. Animals. The landscape feels alive. Yet beneath this activity lies a remarkable predictability. People know where they belong. People know what they are expected to do. The social structure itself encourages repetition. Many occupations pass from one generation to the next. Families develop expertise in specific trades. Knowledge accumulates over decades. Changing professions is possible for some, but often difficult. The easiest path is usually the familiar path. The path already understood. The path already practiced. This tendency strengthens continuity across society. A potter's child often learns pottery. A farmer's child often learns farming. A fisherman's child often learns fishing. The cycle repeats. Not because anyone forces it, but because knowledge is already available. The tools are already available. The opportunities are already nearby. The familiar choice often becomes the practical choice. By midday, the sun dominates the sky. Heat spreads across the valley. Workers feel it pressing against their skin. The brightness seems almost endless. Even the air appears to shimmer above dusty roads. A farmer pauses beside an irrigation channel. He kneels and splashes water onto his face. The relief is immediate. Brief. But welcome. Nearby, others do the same. Everyone understands the challenge of the afternoon heat. No explanation is necessary. Some lessons are shared by an entire society. The climate teaches them equally. As the hours pass, labor continues. A builder lifts stone. A merchant arranges goods. A weaver works patiently with linen. A servant carries supplies between households. Every person contributes to the functioning of the larger community. Most contributions are small. Most are ordinary. Yet together they create a civilization capable of enduring for centuries. The great monuments that future generations admire do not exist separately from these routines. They depend upon them. Behind every massive structure stand countless ordinary workers. People who wake early. People who labor in the heat. People who return home tired. People whose lives are shaped by repetition. Afternoon slowly becomes evening. The change arrives gently. Shadows lengthen. The sunlight softens. The air becomes easier to breathe. Across the valley, workers begin thinking about home. About food. About rest. About family. The day's labor is nearing its end. A fisherman returns to shore. His boat slides quietly against the dock. Nearby, other boats arrive as well. The familiar process begins. Nets are unloaded. Equipment is stored. Tomorrow's preparations quietly begin before today's work has fully ended. Such is the nature of routine. One day flows directly into the next. There is rarely a clear separation. Only a continuous cycle. As evening settles over the villages, cooking fires appear once more. Their smoke rises into the golden light. Children gather near doorways. Adults sit together after long hours of labor. The smell of bread drifts through the air again. The smell is comforting. Familiar. Dependable. A reminder that another day has been successfully completed. Soon darkness begins returning to the valley. The colors fade. The stars reappear overhead. Families retreat indoors or climb onto rooftops where cooler air can be found. Conversations grow quieter. The pace of life slows. The river continues flowing through the darkness. Always moving. Always present. And as countless workers close their eyes once more, the rhythm of ancient Egypt continues exactly as it has for generations. The same stars above. The same water below. The same quiet promise that tomorrow will arrive with familiar work, familiar paths, familiar faces, and another peaceful day beside the Nile. The Nile flows through the darkness as though it has nowhere it needs to be. Its waters move without hurry. They slip past sleeping villages and quiet riverbanks, past fishing boats resting against wooden docks, past fields waiting patiently for another sunrise. Above, the stars shine with calm certainty. The same stars watched over the grandparents of these villagers. The same stars watched over generations long forgotten. Night after night, year after year, they return to their places in the sky. For many Egyptians, this dependable rhythm feels completely natural. The stars return. The river flows. The sun rises. The crops grow. Life continues. There is comfort in knowing what comes next. Inside a small mud brick home near the edge of a farming village, a young child stirs in sleep. The room is quiet except for the soft breathing of family members nearby. The clay walls hold the day's remaining warmth. A woven basket rests in one corner. A water jar stands in another. The objects are simple, useful, familiar. Nothing inside the room exists by accident. Everything serves a purpose. The same could be said for much of Egyptian life. Daily routines develop because they work. They survive because they work. Over time, people stop questioning them. The routines become part of the natural order of things. Hours pass. The darkness begins to soften. A pale silver glow appears along the horizon. The first birds awaken. The village slowly emerges from sleep. A woman steps outside carrying a clay jar. The ground beneath her sandals feels cool. For a brief moment, before the sun fully rises, the world feels almost gentle. The heat has not yet arrived. The air moves softly through the reeds. The river reflects the colors of dawn. These early moments often pass quickly. Yet they are treasured by those who spend long days beneath the Egyptian sun. Soon, more doors open. More footsteps appear. The village begins another day. Not a new kind of day. Not a surprising day. Simply another day. And that predictability shapes nearly every aspect of life. A farmer walking toward his fields already knows what awaits him. He knows which irrigation channel needs attention. He knows which section of land must be inspected. He knows which crops require care. There are few mysteries waiting beyond the village. The land is familiar. The work is familiar. The routine is familiar. Some might imagine that such repetition would feel limiting. But for many ancient Egyptians, familiarity offers security. Uncertainty can be frightening, especially when survival depends upon food production. Predictable routines help reduce risk. They help families plan. They help communities remain stable. As the sun climbs into the sky, the valley brightens. Golden light spreads across the fields. The Nile glimmers quietly. Workers begin their tasks. A group of laborers repairs part of an irrigation system damaged by recent use. The work requires cooperation. Each person understands their role. No lengthy instructions are needed. Years of shared experience have taught everyone what must be done. This is another reason life becomes repetitive. Communities learn effective methods and continue using them. The methods become traditions. The traditions become expectations. The expectations become everyday life. Nearby, a young boy helps his father carry tools. The boy listens carefully as his father explains small details about the land. How water should move. How soil should feel. How certain plants respond to changing conditions. The lessons seem ordinary. Yet they represent generations of accumulated knowledge. Knowledge built slowly. Knowledge preserved through repetition. Knowledge passed from one pair of hands to another. The process continues without interruption. Across the valley, workshops are beginning to fill with activity. A potter prepares clay. His hands move confidently through familiar motions. Press. Fold. Shape. Turn. The sequence has been repeated so many times that it feels almost effortless. Nearby, unfinished jars wait in neat rows. Soon they will join countless others already made. Many of the vessels will look nearly identical. That is not considered a problem. Uniformity is useful. Customers know what to expect. Storage containers perform their tasks effectively. There is little reason to change successful designs. The same principle appears throughout Egyptian society. When something works well, it tends to remain. A carpenter sharpens a tool. A weaver prepares thread. A baker tends an oven. Each person follows routines developed over many years. The repetition creates skill. The skill creates reliability. And reliability supports the larger community. As morning gradually becomes afternoon, the heat begins its familiar rise. Shadows shorten. Dusty roads grow brighter. The air becomes heavier. Workers adapt without much thought. They have experienced this countless times before. Water breaks become more frequent. Movements become more measured. People seek shade whenever possible. The climate teaches patience. No one can rush through an Egyptian afternoon indefinitely. The sun always demands respect. Along the river, fishermen guide their boats through calm water. The Nile remains central to everything. Transportation, food, agriculture, communication. Without the river, daily routines would be entirely different. Because the Nile behaves in relatively predictable ways, people build predictable lives around it. Even the annual flooding follows patterns familiar enough to shape entire calendars. Generations organize their work according to these natural cycles. The river becomes more than a source of water. It becomes a framework for life itself. As the afternoon stretches onward, a merchant sits beneath a shaded canopy. His goods are arranged neatly before him. Customers arrive throughout the day. Some purchase grain. Others seek tools. Some simply exchange news before continuing their journey. The merchant recognizes many faces. Regular customers return repeatedly. Familiar relationships develop. The marketplace becomes another environment shaped by repetition. People know where to find certain goods. Merchants know what customers need. The routine benefits everyone involved. Farther away, a servant moves through the home of a wealthy household. Even here, among people with greater resources, routine remains important. Meals must still be prepared. Rooms must still be cleaned. Supplies must still be managed. The scale may differ. The structure remains. Daily responsibilities continue regardless of social status. Everyone participates in the rhythms of ordinary life. The afternoon eventually begins to soften. The most intense heat starts fading. Workers notice immediately. Shoulders relax. Movements become easier. Long shadows return to the landscape. The golden light of evening spreads across the fields. This transition often feels like a reward. The day's hardest hours are over. The journey home approaches. Along dusty roads, groups of workers begin returning toward their villages. The atmosphere changes. Morning carries anticipation of labor. Evening carries relief from labor. People talk more freely now. Children run ahead. Neighbors walk together. The pace feels unhurried. There is no need to rush. The work can wait until tomorrow. And tomorrow is never very far away. Back in the village, familiar evening routines begin unfolding. Cooking fires appear. The smell of bread drifts through the air. Water is carried. Animals are fed. Tools are stored safely for the night. Families gather together. The repetition continues. Yet within that repetition exists warmth. A father sharing a meal with his children. A grandmother telling an old story. Neighbors exchanging news beneath the fading sky. Small moments. Ordinary moments. Moments that rarely appear in official records. Yet these moments form the true fabric of daily life. As darkness returns, the village gradually becomes quiet. One by one, lamps are extinguished. One by one, conversations end. One by one, families settle into sleep. The stars reclaim the sky. The river continues its endless journey. The fields rest beneath the night air. And across Egypt, another day joins countless others before it. Not famous. Not dramatic. Simply part of a long chain of ordinary days connected together by routine, shaped by the Nile, and carried forward by generations of people who found stability, purpose, and comfort within the steady rhythm of repetition. The night air drifts gently across the Nile Valley. The river glimmers beneath the stars, carrying reflections that break and reform with every small ripple. Along the shoreline, reeds sway quietly. Their soft rustling blends with the distant sounds of water touching mud and stone. The villages are asleep once more. Roofs, courtyards, workshops, and fields all rest beneath the darkness. For a few peaceful hours, the demands of labor seem far away. A farmer is no longer working. A potter is no longer shaping clay. A fisherman is no longer watching his nets. Everyone shares the same quiet pause. Yet even during these hours of rest, the rhythm of Egyptian life never truly stops. Tomorrow already waits just beyond the horizon. The fields are waiting. The river is waiting. The ovens are waiting. And soon enough, the people will rise to meet them. Far from the larger towns, a small farming village sits beside a bend in the Nile. Its homes cluster together like protective shells around the people inside them. The mud brick walls are thick. The streets are narrow. Everything has been built with practicality in mind. Generations have lived here. Generations have worked the nearby land. When children are born, they enter a world already shaped by routines older than anyone can remember. Many will spend their entire lives within sight of the same fields. The same river. The same horizon. This closeness to familiar places creates a strong sense of continuity. The land becomes part of memory. Memory becomes part of identity. And identity becomes tied to repetition. Hours pass beneath the stars. Gradually, the darkness begins to change. The eastern sky softens. The first faint signs of dawn appear. The transition is so slow that it almost goes unnoticed. A bird calls from somewhere near the water. Another answers. The village begins to stir. One by one, people wake. A woman rises and prepares the morning fire. A farmer reaches for tools resting beside a wall. A child rubs sleepy eyes and listens to the sounds of the household coming alive. Morning has arrived again. Just as it did yesterday. Just as it will tomorrow. The routines begin almost immediately. Water must be gathered. Food must be prepared. Animals must be tended. Fields must be visited. The sequence is familiar. So familiar that many people perform parts of it without conscious thought. Years of repetition have woven these actions into daily life. As sunlight spreads across the valley, workers make their way toward their responsibilities. Some head toward fields. Some toward workshops. Some toward boats tied along the riverbank. The roads fill with movement. Dust rises beneath sandals. Voices drift through the cool morning air. A group of farmers walks together. They discuss practical matters. The condition of crops. The level of water in irrigation channels. The weather. Their conversations are shaped by the realities of daily survival. Most attention remains focused on immediate needs. The success of a harvest matters more than distant events. The condition of the fields matters more than grand political developments. For ordinary people, life revolves around what can be seen, touched, planted, harvested, carried, and stored. The fields greet them with familiar sights. Rows of crops stretch across fertile soil. Irrigation channels guide water carefully through the landscape. The smell of earth rises beneath the warming sun. Work begins. A farmer bends to inspect young plants. Another clears debris from a channel. Another checks moisture levels in the soil. Each task seems small. Yet together they sustain entire communities. The work requires patience rather than speed. Nature cannot be rushed. Plants grow according to their own schedule. Water moves according to gravity. Seasons unfold according to patterns established long before any living person was born. People learn to work within these natural rhythms. And by doing so, they become part of them. Elsewhere, a baker prepares dough for another day. The process remains unchanged. Flour. Water. Mixing. Kneading. Waiting. Baking. The sequence has been repeated thousands of times. Every step feels familiar. Every motion has purpose. The baker's hands know exactly what to do. There is something almost calming about such certainty. No difficult decisions. No unexpected changes. Only a well-understood process leading toward a dependable result. Throughout Egypt, similar scenes unfold simultaneously. A carpenter shapes wood. A weaver works linen. A potter turns clay. A scribe records information. Each person contributes in a different way. Yet all are connected through routine. The repetition creates a sense of order. The order creates stability. And stability allows society to endure. By mid-morning, the sun has climbed higher. The coolness of dawn begins fading. Warmth spreads across the valley. Workers continue steadily. The sounds of activity fill the air. Tools strike materials. Animals move through fields. Voices carry across open spaces. The landscape feels alive. Yet beneath the activity lies remarkable predictability. Most people know exactly what tomorrow will require. Not every detail, of course. But the general shape of life remains consistent. This predictability becomes one of the defining features of Egyptian existence. A young girl follows her mother through household tasks. She watches carefully. How to store grain. How to prepare food. How to manage supplies. These lessons are important. One day, she may oversee a household of her own. The knowledge must be passed forward. And so it is repeated. Again and again. Generation after generation. This constant transfer of knowledge helps explain why routines remain so durable. Every new generation inherits not only land and tools, but habits. Ways of thinking. Ways of working. Ways of organizing daily life. The cycle continues naturally. By afternoon, the familiar heat settles across the land. The sunlight feels heavy. Stone walls radiate warmth. The air shimmers above dusty roads. Workers seek moments of shade whenever possible. A fisherman rests briefly beneath a simple shelter near the river. The water moves quietly beside him. He watches it for a moment. The current never seems rushed. The river simply continues. Steady. Patient. Reliable. Perhaps that is why it shapes Egyptian life so deeply. The Nile does not encourage haste. It encourages rhythm. Consistency. Endurance. Over centuries, people living beside it begin reflecting those same qualities. Nearby, a merchant arranges goods beneath a canopy. Customers come and go throughout the afternoon. Many faces are familiar. Relationships develop over years. Sometimes over decades. People know one another. Trust one another. Depend upon one another. These social connections strengthen the repetitive nature of life. Communities become stable because relationships become stable. The same customers return. The same merchants remain. The same exchanges occur. The pattern repeats. As the day slowly moves toward evening, relief begins spreading through the valley. The harshest heat fades. Long shadows stretch across the fields. Workers start gathering tools. Boats begin returning toward shore. Market activity slows. The atmosphere softens. The transition feels almost ceremonial. Not because anyone marks it formally, but because everyone feels it. The day is ending. The labor is nearly complete. The journey home begins. Roads fill with returning workers. The smell of cooking appears once more. Children wait near homes. Families reunite after long hours apart. Simple meals are prepared. Bread is shared. Water is poured. Conversations drift through the evening air. These moments repeat every day. Yet they rarely lose their importance. Routine does not erase meaning. In many ways, routine creates meaning. The repeated gathering of family. The repeated sharing of food. the repeated comfort of familiar faces. These experiences give structure to life. As darkness gradually settles over the Nile Valley once again, lamps flicker inside homes. The stars emerge overhead. The river reflects their light. The sounds of labor disappear. Silence returns. One by one, tired workers close their eyes. Another day has passed. Another day much like the one before it. And another day much like the one that will follow. The Nile continues flowing through the darkness. The villages continue resting beneath the stars. And the great rhythm of ancient Egypt continues, calm and unbroken, carrying ordinary lives gently forward through time like water moving quietly toward the sea. The night over Egypt grows deeper now, not in silence, but in a softer kind of silence that feels layered and full. The river continues its slow movement through the darkness, but even it seems quieter under the weight of late night. Its surface is no longer bright with reflection. Instead, it becomes a dark path, barely visible except where the stars touch it in faint, broken lines. Along its banks, the villages sleep in familiar stillness. Homes of mud and straw hold families in close, simple spaces. Inside these rooms, there is no urgency. No movement. Only the steady rhythm of breathing and rest. The day has been spent. The night is being used for recovery. And this balance between effort and rest has repeated for so long in Egyptian life that it feels less like a choice and more like the structure of existence itself. Far from the fields, a small group of workers sleeps near a construction site. They remain close to their tools even in rest. Stone blocks rest where they were placed. Ropes lie coiled beside unfinished work. The project itself does not pause in a dramatic sense. It simply waits. Just as everything else waits in Egypt during the night. Waiting is part of the rhythm too. Waiting for light. Waiting for labor. Waiting for the return of human movement. Above them, the sky remains unchanged. Stars continue their quiet presence. Constellations appear exactly where they always do. For people who spend their lives outdoors, the sky becomes a familiar map. Not something distant or abstract. But something known. Something trusted. Something that marks time without speaking. As the hours pass, the darkness begins its slow transformation once again. It does not shift quickly. It unfolds. A thin band of pale color appears far in the east. Then grows slightly brighter. Then spreads. The river reflects this change before the land fully does. Water often notices light before soil does. A fisherman wakes near the shoreline. He does not rush. There is no need. His body already understands the timing of the day. He sits quietly for a moment, listening to the river as it touches the boat beside him. The sound is gentle, familiar, reassuring. He stands and begins preparing for the day. Nearby, other fishermen begin to rise as well. No one gives instructions. No one needs to. The routine itself provides direction. Boats are checked. Nets are adjusted. Knots are tested. Every action follows an order learned long ago. An order repeated so many times it no longer requires thought. Soon the boats move away from shore. The river accepts them without resistance. It always does. As the sun begins to rise, the entire valley slowly returns to life. Not suddenly, but gradually. Like a memory becoming visible again. Farmers appear on paths leading to the fields. Merchants begin opening their stalls. Craftsmen unlock workshop doors. Servants move through household courtyards. Each movement feels natural because it has been performed so often before. Repetition gives comfort. Repetition gives direction. Repetition reduces uncertainty. In a world where survival depends heavily on timing and cooperation, repetition becomes essential. The fields, especially, require attention that follows predictable cycles. Water must arrive at the right moment. Seeds must be planted in the right season. Harvest must be gathered at the right time. These cycles do not change quickly. And so human life adapts to them. A farmer walks through his land, inspecting it with practiced eyes. He sees what outsiders might overlook. Small changes in soil. Subtle differences in plant growth. Shifts in moisture. His knowledge is not written down in books. It is stored in memory. In observation. In repetition. Every day spent in the field strengthens that knowledge. Every season deepens it. Nearby, children follow adults through early morning tasks. They do not learn through instruction alone. They learn through participation. Through repetition. Through watching the same actions performed again and again. A child carries water. Another gathers tools. Another watches how grain is measured. These tasks may seem simple, but they form the foundation of understanding. By adulthood, these actions will feel automatic. Part of life. Part of identity. As the sun climbs higher, the valley brightens fully. The Nile reflects a strong band of light. Its presence remains central, as always. The river is not just water moving through land. It is the organizer of time itself. Flooding seasons. Planting seasons. Harvest seasons. Each one arrives in its expected place. And because it arrives predictably, people build their lives around it predictably. In workshops, craftsmen continue their work without interruption. A potter shapes another vessel. A carpenter sands another piece of wood. A weaver continues threading patterns that have been repeated for years. There is a quiet satisfaction in this kind of labor. Not excitement. Not surprise. But familiarity. The feeling of knowing exactly what comes next. And knowing how to do it well. By midday, heat once again settles over the land. The sun becomes intense. The air becomes heavy. Movement slows across fields and streets. People pause under shade whenever possible. The river offers the most relief. Its presence remains cool compared to the surrounding land. Along its banks, fishermen rest. Their boats drift slightly in place. They watch the water without speaking. The river does not change its behavior in dramatic ways. It remains steady. Predictable. Constant. That constancy becomes a kind of silent companion to human life. Something that does not need attention, but is always present. As afternoon progresses, small changes begin to appear in the light. The harshness softens. Shadows lengthen. The valley slowly prepares for evening again. Workers begin gathering their tools. Farmers look toward home. Merchants begin closing stalls. The rhythm of return begins. This return happens every day. Not as an event, but as a pattern. A movement shared by thousands of people at the same time. Dust rises softly along roads filled with footsteps. Voices grow slightly louder now, as fatigue turns into conversation. The smell of food begins to drip from villages before cooking has even fully begun. Inside homes, preparations are already underway. Water is carried. Bread is prepared. Simple meals take shape through practiced hands. Nothing about it feels rushed. Everything feels familiar. As the sun lowers toward the horizon, the sky changes color once again. Gold fades into orange. Orange fades into deeper tones. Then slowly, darkness begins returning to the valley. The Nile reflects this transition with quiet grace. Its surface catches the last light before letting it go. One by one, the sounds of the day fade. The workshops grow silent. The fields empty. The roads clear. And the villages settle into evening. Families gather together. Meals are shared. Stories are spoken softly. Not new stories, but familiar ones. Told again and again. Because repetition carries memory forward. Because repetition connects generations. Because repetition allows life to continue without losing its shape. Soon, lamps are lit. Their glow spreads across mud brick walls. Outside, the stars begin to return. The river continues flowing through the night. And Egypt, once again, rests inside the same rhythm it has always known. A rhythm built not from change, but from continuity. From repetition. From the steady, unbroken cycle of waking, working, resting, and returning. And as the night deepens once more, everything settles into that familiar pattern again. Quiet. Predictable. Endless. Like the Nile itself. The night does not feel empty in Egypt. It feels full of quiet presence. The river is still there, moving through the darkness. The fields are still there, resting beneath the cool air. The villages are still there, holding their sleeping families close inside simple walls of clay and straw. Everything remains. Only movement has paused. Only labor has softened into rest. Above it all, the sky stretches wide and unchanged. Stars remain fixed in their familiar positions, marking time without sound or effort. For people who live so closely with nature's rhythm, the sky becomes something deeply known. Not distant. Not mysterious. But steady. Like the river. Like the fields. Like the routines of life itself. Inside one small home, a child shifts in sleep. A mother adjusts a woven blanket. A father breathes slowly after a long day in the fields. Their bodies carry the weight of repetition. The same movements. The same labor. The same cycle of waking and resting that has shaped generations before them. Outside, a soft wind moves through the village. It passes between narrow paths and low rooftops. It brushes against the edges of clay walls and disappears into the reeds by the river. Nothing resists it. Everything accepts it. The wind, like the river, becomes part of the background of life. Hours pass gently. The darkness begins to thin again. Not suddenly, but slowly, like a curtain being drawn back without sound. The first light of dawn appears far away, touching the edge of the world before the rest of it awakens. The river reflects this change first. Water always notices light early. Then the fields begin to show faint outlines. Then the village itself. A new day arrives without ceremony. Without announcement. It simply becomes present. A fisherman is already awake. He sits near his boat, watching the water. He has done this many times before. So many times that the motion of waking no longer feels like a decision. It feels like rhythm. Like breathing. He checks his nets in silence. The knots are familiar beneath his fingers. The rope carries the memory of yesterday's labor. Soon, other fishermen join him. The shore slowly fills with quiet movement. Boats are prepared. Equipment is adjusted. Lines are checked. The river remains calm, as if waiting for them. And then, almost without effort, the boats begin to move. Outward. Into the familiar flow of water and routine. Elsewhere along the valley, farmers are already walking toward their fields. The paths beneath them are unchanged. Worn by countless footsteps across countless years. Each turn of the road feels known. Each landmark feels expected. A cluster of reeds. A bend in the irrigation channel. A distant palm tree. The landscape does not need to be rediscovered each morning. It is remembered. And memory becomes part of movement itself. As the sun rises higher, work begins across the land. The same kinds of work as always. Water guided through channels. Soil tended with care. Plants inspected and maintained. The cycle continues without interruption. It has always continued this way. A young apprentice in a workshop listens to the sound of tools. The rhythm of labor becomes almost musical. Soft repetition of shaping, cutting, smoothing. He watches closely. Every movement matters. Not because it is new, but because it is repeated. He learns not through change, but through consistency. The same action done again and again until it becomes second nature. This is how knowledge survives here. Not in sudden discoveries, but in steady practice. In repetition across generations. By mid-morning, the valley is fully awake. Light covers everything. The river shines in long reflective bands. Fields stretch outward in green and gold. The desert beyond remains distant and silent. Life continues in its narrow corridor between water and sand. A merchant opens his stall again. He arranges goods in the same order as yesterday. Customers arrive in familiar patterns. Some return from previous days. Some pass through on regular routes. The market is not unpredictable. It is structured, stable, reliable. Even conversation follows familiar paths. Weather, harvests, family, supplies. The same subjects spoken in slightly different ways, day after day. By midday, heat once again presses down on the valley. The sun becomes strong and unrelenting. Movement slows. Shadows shrink beneath the weight of light. People seek shelter where they can. Under awnings. Beside walls. Near the river. The river remains one of the few places where relief can be found. Its presence softens the intensity of the land. Along its banks, fishermen rest quietly. Some sleep lightly. Others simply watch the water move. The river never seems rushed. It does not compete with the sun. It simply continues. And in that continuity, people find a kind of quiet understanding. Afternoon arrives slowly. The harshest light begins to ease. Shadows stretch outward again. Work does not end immediately. It winds down. Gradually. Naturally. Farmers finish their tasks in the fields. Craftsmen complete final adjustments in workshops. Merchants begin closing their stalls. The valley shifts toward evening as a single shared movement. Not coordinated, but aligned. As if the entire land has learned the same timing. The journey home begins. Dust rises along the roads. Footsteps move in groups. Voices return, carrying the small weight of the day's labor. Children run ahead toward home. Adults follow more slowly. The village appears in the distance like a familiar resting place. Smoke begins to rise from cooking fires. The smell of bread returns again. As it always does. Inside homes, evening begins. Meals are prepared with practiced ease. Water is poured. Food is shared. Conversations unfold gently. Not rushed. Not urgent. Just present. The day is spoken about in simple terms. What was done? What remains to be done? What tomorrow might bring? Nothing more than what is necessary. And yet these quiet conversations hold everything together. They preserve the rhythm. They pass it forward. They reinforce the pattern of life along the Nile. Outside, the sky shifts once again. Light fades into gold. Gold into deepening blue. Then into night. Stars return. One by one. Familiar. Unchanging. The river continues flowing beneath them. The fields rest. The villages settle. And the ancient rhythm resumes its quiet dominance. A rhythm without beginning or end. Only continuation. Only repetition. Only the steady, peaceful unfolding of days along the Nile. The night over the Nile has settled into its deepest calm. Not the calm of emptiness, but the calm of something that has already been understood and accepted. The river continues its quiet movement through the darkness, as it always does, carrying reflections of stars that seem to hover just above the water's surface. Along its banks, Egypt rests. Fields lie still beneath the cool air. Boats sit gently against wooden posts. Villages breathe slowly in sleep. Nothing is urgent. Nothing is breaking. Nothing is changing in any sudden way. And that, more than anything, is what defines life here. A steady pattern that continues without interruption. Inside a small home, a family sleeps close together for warmth and comfort. The night has softened the edges of everything. Sounds are distant now. Even thoughts seem to slow. Outside, the wind moves lightly through reeds near the river. It makes a faint sound, almost like a whisper that belongs to the land itself. The reeds bend and return. Bend and return. A small motion repeated endlessly without effort. Just like the lives of the people who live beside them. Hours pass without notice. The sky begins to change again. Darkness fades, not all at once, but in layers. First a hint of gray. Then a softening of the horizon. Then the faint suggestion of color returning to the world. A new day prepares itself quietly. Before the sun appears, a fisherman is already awake. He sits at the edge of his boat, hands resting loosely in his lap. He does not rush. There is no reason to rush. He listens to the river as it brushes against wood and shore. This sound is one of the first sounds of every morning. The river speaks before people do. Soon, others join him along the bank. The familiar routine begins again. Nets are checked. Boats are prepared. Lines are adjusted. Movements are quiet and practiced, requiring little discussion. Everything is already understood. The river will provide what it provides. The fishermen will respond as they always do. Farther inland, the fields begin to awaken under soft morning light. Farmers walk familiar paths that curve gently through the valley. The soil beneath them is dark and rich. It has been shaped by countless seasons of flooding and retreat. Water has come and gone here for generations. And each time it leaves behind life. This predictable gift of the river shapes everything. Planting follows flooding. Growth follows planting. Harvest follows growth. Rest follows harvest. And then the cycle begins again. A young worker kneels beside a channel of water. He guides it carefully toward crops. The flow is slow but steady. It does not need force. Only direction. This simple act is repeated across the valley in countless small variations. The same understanding passed through families. Through neighbors. Through time. By mid-morning, the entire valley is fully active. The sun is higher now. Light spreads evenly across fields, rooftops, and water. The desert beyond remains silent, watching without movement. Life remains concentrated near the river, where everything necessary for survival exists within reach. Workshops are now filled with familiar motion. Tools rise and fall. Hands shape materials that have been shaped many times before. A potter turns clay into vessels that will hold grain and water. A carpenter smooths wood that will become part of homes or furniture. A weaver works thread into fabric that will be worn daily. Nothing here is rushed. Nothing here is experimental. Everything is practiced. Everything is repeated. And through repetition, skill becomes stability. Stability becomes tradition. Tradition becomes life. A merchant in the marketplace rearranges goods again. He does it almost without thinking. The order is familiar. Customers expect it. The stall itself becomes part of the rhythm of the day. People arrive in patterns. Some early. Some mid-morning. Some later, as the heat begins to rise. The market is not chaotic. It is predictable in its own way. Like everything else in Egypt, it follows a rhythm shaped by necessity. As the sun climbs higher, the heat intensifies once again. The air becomes heavy. The ground grows bright and dry. Movement slows across the valley. People adjust without complaint. They have lived with this pattern their entire lives. A farmer pauses under a small patch of shade. He drinks water slowly. He watches the fields breathe under the heat. There is no surprise in this moment. Only acceptance. The day always reaches this point. And it always passes through it. The river nearby continues to move, unaffected by the intensity of the sun. Its surface glows faintly. It offers relief to those who approach it. Along its banks, fishermen rest as they have done countless times before. Some speak softly. Others remain silent. The river requires no explanation. It simply continues. By afternoon, the light begins to soften. The harsh edges of the day begin to fade. Shadows stretch longer across the ground. The valley slowly exhales. Work does not end abruptly. It unwinds. Tasks are completed. Tools are set down. Final movements are made with care rather than urgency. The transition toward evening is always gentle. Almost unnoticed until it is already happening. The return home begins. Not as a sudden change, but as a gradual shift in direction. People move along familiar paths. Dust rises beneath their feet. The village appears ahead, unchanged from yesterday. And from the day before that. And from countless days before that. Inside homes, evening preparation begins again. Firelight appears. Food is prepared. Water is shared. Families gather. The same structure. The same rhythm. The same quiet order of daily life. Conversation flows easily. Not because there is something new to say. But because speaking together is part of the rhythm itself. Stories are repeated. Events are described again. Plans for tomorrow are mentioned as they always are. The repetition of speech mirrors the repetition of work. Both are part of the same cycle. As night returns once more, the sky deepens into darkness. Stars appear again in their familiar positions. The Nile reflects them gently, as if holding the sky in place for a moment. The villages grow quiet. Lamps dim. Homes settle into sleep. And the river continues its journey through the darkness. Uninterrupted. Unchanged. Unmoving in purpose, yet always in motion. Another day completes its cycle. Not marked by dramatic change. But by steady continuation. And as Egypt rests beneath the night sky once more, the same rhythm that has shaped generations continues forward without pause. Wake. Work. Rest. Repeat. A quiet pattern carried gently through time by the river that never stops flowing. The night over the Nile feels different now. Not because anything has changed. But because everything has finally slowed into its deepest stillness. The river continues moving, as it always has, but even its motion feels softer beneath the weight of late darkness. The surface is dark glass, broken only by faint reflections of distant stars. The villages along its banks are quiet. Not just silent, but fully at rest, as if the land itself has finally finished speaking for the day. No fires burn now. No footsteps move along the roads. No voices drift through the air. Only the slow breathing of sleeping homes remains. Inside one of those homes, a family lies together in the familiar comfort of repetition. They do not think of it as repetition. They think of it as life. The same waking hours. The same working hours. The same returning home at sunset. The same meals shared in soft evening light. The same stars above every night. This rhythm has carried them through seasons. Through floods and harvests. Through childhood and age. Through years that felt long, yet passed in the same steady pattern. Outside, the river continues its journey. It does not hurry. It does not pause. It does not remember yesterday or anticipate tomorrow. It simply flows. And in that quiet movement, it holds something larger than time. It holds continuity. It holds the shape of a world where change is slow, and life is built on what repeats rather than what surprises. Far beyond the villages, the desert rests in silence. endless and unmoving. A reminder of what the river resists. And what life along its banks has always depended upon. Contrast. Balance. Dependence on something steady in a world that can otherwise feel vast and uncertain. Now, as the night reaches its deepest point, even that contrast fades into calm. The wind moves lightly through reeds. The water touches the shore in soft, patient rhythms. And everything settles into stillness that feels almost complete. A stillness that does not feel empty, but full. Full of lives lived in cycles. Full of days that followed one another like gentle footsteps across time. Full of work done and repeated and passed down. Full of ordinary moments that built an entire civilization without needing to announce themselves. And slowly, even that sense of presence begins to soften. The river remains. But it becomes quieter in the mind. The fields remain. But they fade into darkness. The villages remain. But they become part of the night. Only the sky stays fully visible now. Wide. Endless. Unchanging. The stars above Egypt shine with the same calm light they always have. They do not move in ways the eye can easily notice. They simply endure. Just like the river. Just like the land. Just like the people who once lived along them, repeating the same quiet patterns of survival, year after year. And now, as this long journey through ancient daily life comes to its final rest, even the idea of repetition itself begins to feel like something gentle. Not something heavy. But something that held everything together. A rhythm that made life possible. A rhythm that shaped memory, work, family, and time itself. And in the end, nothing feels broken. Nothing feels lost. Only softened. Only complete. Only still. The river continues flowing into the night. The stars continue watching without end. And ancient Egypt, in all its quiet repetition, finally fades into peaceful silence. Slow. Soft. Endless. Like sleep.